Let's talk about Diaspora by Greg Egan. But first, we have roughly 5 billion years before our sun exhausts the hydrogen fuel in its core and starts burning helium, forcing our sun into a transition to a red giant. This will cause our sun to expand and occupy the space we're in right now. Long before this, though, about 1 billion years from now, the sun will become too hot and boil our precious oceans. Given these harsh truths, it is inevitable that we will be forced to leave our spot in the solar system due to some sort of unknown challenge. Admitting this, it opens a lot of really fun questions about how and possibly why we will be part of this eventual diaspora. What will this exit from our original nest look like? What will hasten this transition? Will we already be long gone? Spread out among the stars in various forms? Greg Egan's 1998 Diaspora plays with these challenges and throws us 1,000 years into the future to see one possible path forward for humanity and all our weird transhumanist phases. Full disclosure, I love Egan's books. I devoured his 1994 release Permutation City and his 2019 release Perihelion Summer. He's brilliant and unique. Some quirky fun facts though about Egan. He doesn't attend conventions, he doesn't sign books, and he intentionally does not have a single photograph of himself on the internet though. He is brilliant though. Alright, actual review time. Diaspora is one of the most mind-boggling sci-fi books I've ever read. And I've read hundreds. But warning, this transhumanist adventure is dense. Okay, here's the publisher blurb. Try even to follow this along. By the end of the 30th century, humanity has the capability to travel the universe, to travel beyond Earth and beyond the confines of the vulnerable human frame. The descendants of centuries of scientific, cultural, and physical development divide into three: Fleshers, true Homo sapiens; Gleisner robots, embodying human minds within machines that interact with the physical world; and Polises, supercomputers teeming with intelligent software containing direct copies of billions of human personalities now existing only in the virtual reality of the polis. Diaspora is the story of Yatima, a polis being created from random mutations of the Konishi polis base mind seed, and of humankind, of an astrophysical accident that spurs the 1,000-fold cloning of the polises, of the discovery of an alien race, and of a kink in time that means humanity, whatever form it takes, will never again be threatened by acts of God. Okay, so that's the publisher blurb. So for some context, Egan's books usually punch me in the face and then drag me along for 8 to 10 hours. Egan's books are unapologetically technical. Diaspora was definitely the roughest Egan experience so far. No one wants to consider themselves a moron, but with Egan's hard sci-fi catalog, I continually ask myself, why? Why do I have no idea what's going on? It's not even his fault though. If he wants to talk about quarks and neutrons and stars and communications via XYZ wavelengths and other deeply scientific principles and theorems, I'm all for it. But I constantly crash into a brain ditch wondering, am I this bad of a book driver? So this book takes place, like you heard earlier, 1,000+ years in the future. We've crawled out of our gravity well and exist in those three forms. Remember, humans, AIs, and sentient robots. But it's important to note, biological transhumans, the fleshers in this book, can include 1 million different permutations of humans. Think homies with gills, eagle wings. We also have these human minds that have transcended the physical existence into a cyber realm. This group of folks is really interesting because they've uploaded their consciousness either to exist in the virtual realm or to have a robot avatar that they can use in the physical realm. Obviously, many kind of hop back and forth, and some have gone even further into basically rewriting their software program to something so alien, their core functions are so different that nobody in this realm could ever even imagine what it is to be anything at all. There's a lot of technobabble, and that may or may not be completely practical in Egan's insinuations and explanations, but for full transparency, I was admittedly lost for 40% of the book. You can actually go to his website and see weird science math equations and the context he references. The visuals are A+. Do I get them? Big nope. Weirdly, I could follow what was going on. But sometimes the science speak was so heavy, I felt like I was back in college in an Arabic class, just struggling along yet again, casually nodding along, catching one word out of every sentence. This was a similar literary experience to Cissy Liu's hugely successful Three-Body Problem, also known as the Remembrance of Earth Past trilogy. Very similar to that last book in the trilogy where there's just a lot. And it's uniquely suited, though, to answer one of Diaspora's main questions of what happens in the long term of our universe. For a book that came out in the late 90s, it was fun to see him play around with gender. Similar to Egan, I also see gender becoming way more fluid once you're a bunch of ones and zeros. The literary decision to use to have most digital citizens using pronouns V, their, this was helpful to track who was a flesher and who was a digital being residing in a robot. It was good to see him correctly do non-gender pronouns. It's not something that you saw in the 90s by any means. So yes, I loved a lot about this book, but there's a lot to love. Most of the characters are immortal. Most have a ton of copies, similar to We Are Legion, We Are Bob, a hugely popular series. I think Egan also achieves a fun challenge for sci-fi authors. And again, no worries, I won't spoil anything, but he does a great job of how do you depict aliens. I love when super smart people play with what communication with aliens might be like. One podcaster reviewing this book said, "This is an inhuman book," and I couldn't agree more. As for the Audible audiobook, Adam Epstein's narration was a lot. When Fatima, essentially our main protagonist, is going through, code to a living thing, it was a lot. This birth, several reviewers connected with. It's called orthogenesis. In fact, a lot of people really connected with that scene, and they picked up on something I seem to have totally missed while listening, but now immensely appreciate, and that's this: that the book does a really good job of exploring death and how we, in whatever form, cope with loss. So just huge kudos to Egan. Looking back, they're absolutely right. So quick note though, the ship of Theseus, one of the oldest concepts in Western philosophy, in the metaphysics of identity. The ship of Theseus, is a thought experiment that raises the question of whether an object that has had all of its components replaced remains fundamentally the same object. There are variants that you might have heard before: grandfather's axe. If the head and the handle are replaced, what is it? So all that being said, Egan's ship axe of Theseus here is fascinating. He does a great job of playing with what does identity mean if you can rewrite yourself and change planes of consciousness. Gender, everything about you is malleable. What is identity when everything is somewhat easily replaced? So as I comb the internet for a deeper understanding of this book, I stumbled across one reviewer that started with, "I want to give this book 5 stars. I want to give this book 1 star. It was amazing. It was terrible." I agree with this, but with a caveat. The educational background you bring to a sci-fi book can completely change your understanding of what is going on. So how can I fault a brilliant dude with mathematics degrees and all this advanced understanding of physics playing with these fun problems? Simply stated, don't read Egan if you aren't looking for hard sci-fi. Now, this rule does not apply to his climate fiction adventure, Perihelion Summer. That's an awesome book. Read it right now. It will not confuse you. You'll love it. So at the end of the day, final review, 3.5 out of 5 stars due to the enormous science info dumps. I'm not against info dumps. You know, when an author just drops stuff about a specific topic for pages, sometimes paragraphs on the topic that they're playing with. You know, Kim Stanley Robinson is notorious for this. His 2020 release, The Ministry of the Future, he did a great job. I loved it. I was like, teach me. I want to learn more about these crazy concepts. But it's really tricky to do without messing up the pacing. So for context though, if you follow sci-fi heavyweights Charles Stross and David Brin on Goodreads, both notably rate this 5 out of 5 stars. And another podcast episode that covered this had a great quip. And I have to repeat it. One of them said, seeing an ocean in a window is better than never seeing one at all. I agree with what he was saying. Simply trying to understand this transhumanist adventure and all of its technobabble and science speak is worth it. Peer through that scary window, constantly check out the glossary, and keep notes. So, next up, I am reading Ben Bova's 1992 Mars. I'm 4 chapters in. I'm loving it. And then after that, this month, I've got The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. I've loved all of her books in the Wayfarer series. So yeah, stay tuned for more reviews. I've got a handful of Egan's books that I've been eyeing for a while now. Quarantine, his 1995 book, his 1998 Distress. They're all part of this thing called the subjective cosmology cycle, which explores similar concepts of like existence and becoming a digital being. I love Permutation City, so I know they're not connected, but they're kind of part of a trilogy. So at the end of the day, if you enjoy hearing about my 200 plus sci-fi book journey, please hit subscribe. Maybe check out my online bookstore. Your purchases help me feed my insatiable habit to collect beautiful books. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.